Well, I hope you guys are nice and comfy for these last couple rounds of today's tournament, as we're now in round 7 and we're finally reaching table 1. Fernando, how do you feel?
This is the most exciting moment ever. So, as we were discussing before, this is for all the marbles. If you win here, you have to win twice more, but you won. And
Okay, thank. But we do have some really solid players now. We're in table 1, so we expect it after 7 rounds to be very, very strong players. We have Jackson playing Trafalgar Law. I think I pronounced it correctly that time. And Alvin playing Kinemon. So some of the best decks, tier 1 material. Let's see what they can do, and let's get right into the game.
but I actually have decent experience as the Kinemon pilot going into Trafalgar, just because a lot of our local players have Trafalgar from set one moving to set two, and the matchup is rough for Kinemon. Let's just say that.
All right, so we have here the Law player going first. Again, it's unknown to us who won the die roll, but certainly I think Law might want to go. I don't know. Do you want to say second in this matchup just to put Kinemon in a weird position?
I do believe that the law player actually wants to go first, just because they can pretty optimally shamble on the third turn of the game. But at the same time, giving Kinemon the ability to Okiku on one is a little awkward. So, but it is feasible that he chose to go first.
So he's just gonna go. Oh boy, 5-5 at the Law player. He's gonna take the first one with the Okiku. Will he defend the second one? He goes
I was
ahead
about to say
and
it
takes
wouldn't
it as
be.
well.
Yeah, it wouldn't be surprising to just take
And
it
I,
here. I
oh
think
my god, I
that.
think a secret Yamato. Oh, what is happening here?
And yeah, this is the strict punish to taking the first two life. So that is actually a four drop 7k vanilla effectively in this matchup, because
You're
that
not Kazuki
his effect
Oden.
only triggers off of being the Oden leader, but he's actually obviously Kinemon, so there's no effect. But the fact that he attacks for 7 is incredibly efficient. So
So yeah, this is really interesting. Very much, I was not expecting Denjiro to come down in this matchup. As an Odin enjoyer, I do like seeing him every once in a while. But
so
seeing him in a non-Odin based deck for not his ability, just for the fact that his stat line is so crazy, is pretty interesting to me. The only
yes,
thing
and
that I think of is
definitely.
it removes a counter from your deck, right? Because this is a 5/7 with no counter power in a deck that already has a lot of very high costed cards. So, but definitely this is table 1. It's been proven to working well for him. He goes 5 at what I'm assuming is the Okiku, and we'll go ahead and see an X Drake come down.
Oh wow! So that is a crucial extract to have on the turn to deal with the Okiku pretty effectively after baiting out a guard from the hand. So an incredible extract there. But going back to the Dendro, definitely a good one of in this sort of strategy, because it bridges the gap in the second turn of the game against red players. Red doesn't have an easy way to deal with 7k, so definitely a magic number against that matchup, which can be difficult sometimes. But
I
we
really
see.
I really do like this, by the way. We also have the classic scenario of like we have one character, and I'm assuming, again, table 1, he's going to go Kinemon effect, play Momo, and then we'll see where he chooses to finish off this turn.
I do believe, depending on whether he has Kai Viper, he has Ezo and wants to maximize the leader reduction. I mean, it just depends on what he wants to do. Honestly, swinging at life is almost the same as swinging at a character here. I'll be honest, because being at 2 life is very precarious if you go down to 1 life here and don't guard it. So I think that just attacking life from here on out will be probably the play pattern that we see. And do we go sideways with this Dendro or keep him safe? It looks like
Holy moly.
we're keeping him safe. Okay, flooding the board with a bunch of these cards when the Trafalgar player only started with a zero attack one drop is actually quite effective. So I
I
kind of
mean,
like.
I think the Law player held back a lot because of the fact that he summoned the like that's the thing that's so strong about Kinemon in these aggressive matchups. Kinemon went just he went second, goes trigger effect, goes Okiku, and now you kind of don't want to develop into Okiku because you just put yourself on the back of it. But by not developing into the Okiku, you've allowed him to just deploy a free Denjiro, and yeah, that's terrifying.
I think the context of this game changed dramatically when the Dendro came down, because if it hadn't been such a large statted threat, then taking the life in the early game from the perspective of the law player would have actually been just fine, because he would have got an influx of card in his hand while also not being as threatened. But the fact that you're getting swung at for 7k every turn from now on is actually super threatening. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's also really funny to note that we were talking about Denjiro earlier. I believe like a couple of days ago, we are like, man, Denjiro was gonna be crazy in this, and then they said you have to be Kazuki Oden, and then we decided, well, maybe a 7K for 4 is not bad, and we opted not to. But obviously, there's something to be said about it. There is some merit to that card. Very, very
mhm.
powerful. So we've gone ahead and Bonnied, we've Nami'd, and can we finish it off? We've got a Beji that's being added by the Bonnie, which will get us all the way to our desired 5 character count. And finally, we're allowed to do some law shenanigans.
Yes,
Issue
but
being that there is an Okiku on board.
the law engine is certainly churning right now. But at the same time, is he just way too far behind, even as early as turn three? I mean, going first, it feels like did not reward him that much based on his opening, and the fact that he had to take an entire turn just to X Drake, even though it was almost mandatory to do on the Okiku, or else the Okiku would have just ended the game on its own. It's just such a hard tempo loss that I wonder if he can come back from it.
Yeah, this is going to be a very difficult turn. Is there something to be said about going Makino at the... Yeah, is there something to be
Yeah,
said
so
about
for sure,
Makino at
Makina's
Momo?
attacking. It's just a free attack.
You
I would
have
actually say
to...
you defend it as well.
Yeah, I believe you do force the X-Drake to really go in. If you don't defend it, then the X-Drake could potentially try and go for your Denjiro. So it's going to be tough. Hmm.
Does even if you defend it, what does the X Drake do in that scenario? I mean, protecting the Dendro is probably trivial. I mean, it's so easy to defend a 7K in this position. I mean, it would take a lot of Dawn investment to force the kill on the Dendro. But that's
Well,
maybe something he
certainly.
has to do.
Yeah, he might have to do it because what I see here is at least one Dawn on the X-Drake, X-Drake 7 at 7, and then he's going to go Beji, trigger the effect of Law, Shamble the Machino for a Law to bounce the, you know.
Is there something to be said about
Here we
not?
go.
Okay, so he
Yeah,
goes
this
for
is
the
the
Shamble
classic.
play.
This is what I was expecting to come down. We'll go see the
Oh, and
Brook.
this
Oh,
is a
Brook is kind of
fantastic play,
cool. So
actually.
Brook is very dope as he comes down. We were expecting a blocker, but now he go 9 at 7, which is rip 2 cards, which I believe he's gonna pay no matter what. So it's actually, funnily enough, double Ezo, which is, or is it Ezo Rizo? I can't really tell. It looks like double Ezo to
It's
me.
going to be some
Oh, he
kind of
goes
okay.
Ezo Cat Viper. I guess he might have said 10, but he just denoted. So he goes 9 at it, removes 2 cards though. Now the Kinemon player goes to 4 cards in hand, but he has a lot of tempo advantage. If he's able to just go ahead and like be aggressive here, swing into the Law player's board, and then stick an Oden, ooey ooey.
So who do you tap down here? I mean, if the Okiku attacks, do you tap down the Law or the Veggie? I
I think
feel
Beji, because you are going to cause the Law to become a chump blocker. There's also something to be said if you want to go for a board control centered game plan, but if you go for a board control centered game plan, you're playing straight into the Law's hands, right? You're giving them more time. By giving them more time, that's not what we really want to do in this position. At least that's what I think. You might want to go 6. You might have even wanted to go 7 at leader and suspend the Beji. Is something to be said there. But the Law player goes ahead. He goes ahead and rests the Law.
the
It looks like
Law.
he swung at X Drake.
Yeah, he attacked the X Drake. I can't necessarily say I agree with doing that simply because the board is already cluttered. It's going to be cluttered for the rest of the game. That's just how Law works. And the fact
Mhm.
that the Law players at 1 life, you could just start forcing out large chunks of like Dawn powered attacks. So
Yeah, there was something to be said about just going like 8 face with Okiku, tap the Beji, see what he does. Then 8 again with Denjiro, see what he does, or 9, I guess, and then going Kinemon to clear the Beji, and then just giving him more time. The
yeah,
only thing is he is very low on cards in hand, so he won't be able to sustain his board for much longer. And it doesn't look like he has any big bombs in hand. I do know that he has a Cat Viper, so maybe there was something to be said about summoning a Cat Viper there, tapping the Beji, using Okiku to suspend the Law, but it looks like he's just going to end the turn by restanding the Okiku, which is not terrible.
definitely, if he wanted to play the 5 drop Law, it makes his attacks made sense. But I just feel he would have been much more rewarded with pressing his advantage. I mean, like you're saying before, you could have tapped one blocker with the Okiku, the other blocker with the Cat Viper, and just kind of gone for a pseudo all in on that
Yeah, just
turn.
say, give me your hand or lose, depending what his hand is. But if he gives you his hand, then you're now both at equal hand sizes, and then you just Law to restand your Okiku, which means you'll be able to threaten him on the next turn. and then we're just having a good time.
So
So we'll see how he goes ahead and manages this turn. So Law kind of got some breathing room there, which is kind of what they needed. But do they have the cards in their hand that will enable him to capitalize off of this?
this is where actually started like law might come into effect because if he goes 7 on Dendro, and then just for 1 2 mana shambles can go ahead and untap one of his two 7K attackers and attack the Dendro one more time, it might actually just die. So
Yeah, I believe he also gets to like restand a Brook in doing so. Like he gets a 2K back to his hand by bouncing the Brook, and then he gets to do everything. So he'll go X-Drake 7, I'm assuming at the Dendro. He has another Law in hand, which is going to prove to be a very strong card. He's going to go ahead and X-Drake to counter out of it. He has 2 cards left. I believe one of them is an Ezo and the other one is a Cat Viper. I don't think we should know about the Ezo, but oh, he pitched a Cat Viper, so we don't know if it's a Cat Viper or not. Let's see how
so
he chooses to end this turn, because it is kind of spooky. You also, even in the Law player side, even if you are able to clear the Dendro, you have to play with some amount of respect because you also could just be, you can also just lose on the crackback just because of the way that Okiku works.
yeah, so this is him essentially going into the tank a little bit and deciding whether he wants to actually attack with his 5 drop law, or if he's in enough of a commanding position where he just attacks with
Interesting.
lead. And the Kinawan player definitely takes it there because they want to refuel their hand a little bit. That was a certainly an interesting attack there. There was
So he's
something to
gonna
be
go ahead
said
and
about
shamble.
just tapping the law to value block, but
And then he's going to end the turn with a pistol on the Okiku. And pistol on Okiku feels fine here because we are going to eventually create this, make the Law chump block us, right?
yeah,
Um,
so it just feels like the law is using his Dawn every turn, but at the same time, the game plan that he's employing is not optimal. And at least from the perspective of what we know that the Kinemon players like win conditions are. So I really would have wanted to see that Dendro not survive the turn,
I don't
or at
know. This
least
is this is
force.
kind of tough. I was about to just say this match is literally an Oden waiting room. The moment an Oden comes onto the board, we're gonna have to switch gears entirely and speak of the devil and he's here. Oden just comes down for 8. He has 1 Dawn available to him if he wants to go ahead and use it. Ah, man, that Oden is actually so backbreaking. It's crazy.
Yeah, now this Dendro, if he doesn't have anything to do with his Dawn and he goes attack 8 on the X Drake might just die. The pressure is gone from the side of the Law player, and this Odin is simply going to end the game. So
So yeah, I do believe that attaching a Dawn here would be quite interesting, but the fact that he keeps 1 Dawn up could signify that he has a Veggie or a Waterfall.
yeah, I want to
Waterfall would
say
also
Waterfall
be
more likely than the
unbelievably
Veggie,
unbalanced.
but yeah, either is fine here.
He opts to see. It looks like he's going face for 7, and he's gonna go ahead and block 2K. So we've lost 2 Brooks. Let's see how the Law player goes ahead and tries to come back on this board. Still 2 cards in the Kinemon's side, but man, that Odin, if he whiffed on the Odin this turn and he had like another turn to like kind of relax, then he'd be okay. But having that Odin come down is just changed the
Devastating for
game.
sure.
Yeah, it just changed the game.
Yeah, and maybe the course of action that the Law player took during the previous turn was actually alluding to the fact that the Kinemon player didn't have an Odin, and he was just saying, okay, you're not. If you top deck an Odin, that's fine. If you don't top deck an Odin, then this line of play leaves me with the highest level of board control. But now he did actually see the Odin, so a little crazy.
Yeah, this is kind of tough. So we're gonna go ahead and see another 7, which is gonna go ahead and get. I huh? Oh, he swung at life. Hmm.
Yeah, so these attacks for 7 on life will eventually start to amount to having to be guarded, right? Because you were at 3 before, now you're at 2. If you go down to a 1 with this one, now every attack from here on out has to be guarded. So these 7s are taking a toll.
You know what's kind of terrifying too? Like, there's also that fear that at some point in time, the starter deck law just comes out and just says, "Ya yeet." So he's gonna go ahead and block with the Trafalgar, pitch a 2K. So now we've lost the blocker, and
So I do believe here if he just goes attack 9, untap the 9, attack 9 again with that starter deck law that you mentioned, it could be perilous.
Maybe we don't even have to swing 9. What if we just swung 7s? Definitely, there's also something to be said about potentially trying to clear the board here, but it might be a little too late. It just also depends on what's in Jackson's hand. If he doesn't have access to the Star Deck law, having access to the OPO1 law is also simply just as good, in my opinion. But how does he? And there we go. So I do think he's going to go Nami and then Shamble the Nami. Oh, this is going to be kind of crazy.
Oh, he took that.
That's
Okay.
a 7, yeah. So that's going to be another 7 at life. He's going to tab 2 to bounce the Nami to play what seems to be a law.
Third
Solid.
third law
Yeah,
here
that's
is
a third
probably just gonna
law.
seal the game, right?
Do you think so? It's not going to be. It doesn't seem that simple to me. There's always some sort of cards that can come down from the Kinemon side. There's always I forgot what that card's called. The one drop suspend a card. It's like let
Oh
me
yeah,
see if I can go
the
find it. It,
Toketsu. I want to
it's
say.
like Paradise. Yeah, Paradise Tatsuka. I'm not sure if
Tatsu.
that's in his deck, but there's a lot of interesting, tech choices in this player's deck. So maybe he just has access to this Paradise Tatsuka, which is going to be able to go ahead and rest the Beji, or if he has Cav Viper. These laws being 5 cost blockers is actually super optimal for him.
I feel like
But we'll see.
these laws not going sideways is indicative of the law player believing that he's actually in a comfortable position even after that Oden came down, which I can't necessarily say I agree with, but at the same time, it just looks like he's chilling behind the wall of 4 blockers. So
That do be what Lost does sometimes. It's also interesting to note that he picked up the Jet Pistol, which means that your Trafalgar Law might as well turn sideways this turn because it will not be able to do it on the following. Hmm.
there's something to be said about the law going in for 8 just to see if he gets a chump out of the loss. But there's so many cards in the lost player's hand now. I think upwards of 5. So he could even defend most of his laws.
So he's going to go in for 6. 6 is an interesting number. I also believe there's something to be said about blocking here with Beji. Again, block when you still can type of mentality. Because if a Cat Viper comes down here and removes the Beji, we've effectively lost that 2k for free.
How large will the Odin swings be this turn? I think the right number is just base
I
8.
think 8. I think 8 is pretty crazy.
So counting the 2Ks in the discard pile right now, it would seem there's quite a few of them actually. So maybe the Kinemon player incentivized to swing for numbers that would involve assuming that the law player doesn't have 2Ks in hand.
Hmm.
That could also be a possibility, but
Well, we know there's exactly 4 cards left in the Law player's hand. One of them being a Jet Pistol. We also know that there are 4 blockers. Now, this Denjiro is swinging for 9. I do believe we're not going to get any more value out of this Beji.
this Veggie has to go sideways right now.
Right, I feel like this is a really good block for the Beji.
If the Veggie goes sideways now, it also means that some amount of laws are going to die this turn, but it feels like that's going to happen no matter what.
Interesting.
Okay, so
Wow, that
now
is
this,
so dangerous.
yeah, this is the most devastating line of play if there's a tapper involved, and you've been alluding to it the entire time. He's hovering over 4 done, so it feels like a Yamato is available here.
I don't think Yamato is the best use of our Dawn, but it's most certainly okay. I don't know. Yamato doesn't feel as good as
Oh,
this
the
would
full
feel.
on
There we
cavalry.
go. Yeah. So he did have a secondary Cav Viper, and that's what I'm talking about. You kind of got to take these blocks when you get the opportunity to here. So the last card in life, he still has 5 Dawn available to him, and he has 3 more swings.
So
So we might just
because of the texture of the game, that Cat Viper is essentially kill a law, which is kind of crazy.
yeah. How crazy is that, right? The Cav Viper becomes Jet Pistol in a sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So
And
we're gonna
defending.
choose to defend the law. Whoa, 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 whoa. I mean, that's kind of okay because we just need one law to survive, right? If one law survives, then we can go ahead and do our shenanigans. Yes? So the fact that we were able to block an attack is pretty darn nice. We're gonna go ahead and lose a law here, I believe. There's no way we can
I think
defend that.
he might be pump faking because he wants to feign that his hand is actually strong. He might be saying like, "Oh, I could defend this if I wanted to, but I won't."
He's gonna pay 2 for a killer, I'm assuming, and there we go. We have 1 blocker left, but I believe this is the last turn in this game, or at least it has to be. Okay, so we have a Jet Pistol. which we were cognizant of, which is should be going and removing a blocker from the board,
But
preferably the Trafalgar.
if Jet Pistol comes down and there's any semblance of a decent hand from the Kinemon player, I just don't see a world where he loses. So
What do you mean?
it would have
From
to
the
be
Kingdom?
it would have to be a combination of Jet Pistoling the Law and also getting rid of the killer somehow.
Mm, maybe. Maybe. I feel like he needs to have like Jet Pistol, Machina. Oh man, Machina Jet Pistol would go super hard because then and then obviously Structure Deck Law. So you Jet Pistol the Law, then you play Machina. Machina will tap, give the Nami a potential attack. Nami will go in, Law
Mhm.
will go in, and then you start putting everything on your 6 cost Law blockers. So that's the way that I think is our out here. But there's very few cards left in Jackson's hand, so he really just has to show them to me.
You see him, his mannerisms trembling a little bit, just thinking out his turn, seeing how he's going to assign his Dawn. Definitely a difficult turn to navigate.
Hmm.
Something to be said about. I mean, is it the last turn of the game if he leaves all his blockers up? I mean, you have to assume that at 0 life he's
It it,
just going to
ha- it
lose
has
on
to
the way
be
back.
just look at the Kinemon's board.
Yeah,
It's
so
just it's a little too
definitely
wet and wild if you ask me.
has to cobble together some sort of a kill turn here.
I guess we also have to. We can't play around 3 2Ks in his hand. I don't think that's a feasible way to think that we can win this game. We have to play it in a scenario in which, okay,
Oh, that's Vista. Okay,
Vista's
and we
interesting,
know Jet Pistol, so
but that is 7 Dawn. That's a lot of Dawn investment to remove the blockers. We wanted the blockers to kind of just be chumps. Hmm. Let's see what ends up happening here.
an
We'll go
attack.
7.
And sec
Let's
through the
see here.
law, maybe baiting a law block plus saving the law, but that would never happen. So,
Whoa.
oh, okay, that was insane.
I think you just go 5 with lead here, actually, and then again, I'm playing as if he has structure deck law in his hand, right? I'm assuming that structure deck law is in within grass. If he does have it, he fives with the leader, then he puts everything that's not 2 Dawn on the other law, and then just goes Haya Haya.
I think we see
Oh, so it will be jet pistoling here.
this is just 7 and 5, and hope it's good enough.
7 and 5 and hope it's good enough. This is interesting, and it
Oh,
is just all bricks. Ooh.
wow.
Whoa. That is not how I expected that game to end, but that's what I'm trying to say. Sometimes the Kinemon players, their hand is just fluff. It's just air. I mean, they
Yeah,
have 20 cards in hand, but like you can't imagine that they're all counter-powered cards. They just don't have enough time to deploy all of them. And we see it right here. We see it right here. Huh.
definitely a very exciting game. I mean, all around phenomenally played. I believe from both players. Honestly, that Dendro really changed the texture of the game and just went. I mean, even though the Kinemon player lost with it in play, it stayed in play the entire game for like 4 or 5 turns and just put in a massive amount of work. So very impressive card there. And you know, first time we see an Oden lose in the feature match area.
Yeah, actually, in terms of the feature match, this is the first time that we see Oden come down. I didn't mean Oden still has yet to be KO'd in a
Just the
tournament
player
setting,
got killed
apparently, but it's
instead.
just the player has lost. But that is a very interesting ending to that game, and not one that I was expecting. I kept expecting the structure deck law. Kept thinking that he was just baiting attacks and pushing through, but very well played by Jackson, staying composed because the opening from that Kinemon player, I think I saw it in the chat. People were like, "Oh, this is GG. Law is at 1 life. It's over." And then honestly, Law was able to bring it back with he cobbled up an assortment of blockers, did a couple searches, and was able to just shamble his way to victory. Super solid. And congratulations to Jackson for taking that and continuing to be undefeated.
I do feel like there was something to be said about the Kinemon player maybe utilizing his Dawn more aggressively into the 6K laws. Because when the law player was at 1 life and the only thing between him and losing it was 3 cards in hand or 4 cards in hand around there, and then 3 laws, you could just attack for 9 a bunch of times and force the loss to die, literally.
Hmm.
And I feel like that would have been kind of like a pseudo board control way of mitigating the loss position. So
I think it all comes down to that one turn that I was talking about. There was like that turn where Okiku swung for 6 at the X Drake and tapped the Law.
exactly, I think
That turn was
that
pretty
line of
crucial
play was
because
brutal. Yeah.
yeah, it was probably not the most optimal line of play. I think he just swung at the X Drake for 6 multiple times.
Mhm.
And eventually the Law player didn't have to guard too much or lose too much of the board state. So basically, it came down to the fact that he wasn't, finishing his game plan. He put him all the way down to one, but he wasn't able to at least, make the hand sizes equal. And then Law was able to just extend the lead by looping the Namis and the Bonnies with the Law from the OPO1 set.
Mhm.
So very well played by the Law. Honestly, very tight game. Could have gone either way, and very interesting card choices by the Kinemon players.